Beware the Ides of March, as the saying goes. In today's video, we'll be going over some preliminary March statistics, preparing for the next month, and seeing as Bitcoin has been more or less boring in the short term here, although maybe I need to revise that statement because Bitcoin is now trading below 94,000 bucks. Before I started recording this video, Bitcoin was trading at around 95,500 bucks. So, you know, we're going to audible here. We're going to go over something very bizarre for the month of February related to the February statistics that I do think warrants some consideration. So let's go here and let's start off with this, because I think it can give, you know, a bit of a bias towards the short term. And something very weird has happened on February, or in February, for Bitcoin. February has been both the high and the low of the month, which from all the months that I've documented, which I have missed a few, to be fair, like we still don't have about 3 of them, but for all of the other ones, we've never actually seen the high and the low of the month on the exact same day, which is very uncharacteristic. And of course, you know, February is not over right now. It is still about 4 days left in this trading month to go. So how likely is it that we see both the high and the low on the same day? I mean, historically, very unlikely. And seeing as Bitcoin's pointed to the downside right now, I guess it'd be more likely to put in the low later within this month. At least, you know, as it kind of currently stands. But we'll expand a little bit about that later on, relate that to the hash ribbons indicator as well. And now let's go into some March statistics, and let's just bring this chart right back here. And oops, let me get rid of this because it's not relevant. But I've gone through each and every of the past Marches in Bitcoin's history. And I've taken note of the win rate, the returns, both the average and the median. And for that, we can pop back over here, and we can see that March, I almost say February, but March has been more or less a coin flip in terms of whether it's likely to close positively or negatively, with 8 out of 15 prior Marches closing positively. I should note that the past 4 Marches have all been positive and all been big positive as well. You know, the biggest returns I've actually ever seen for March, at least for the Boolah side there, in the past 4 years. But, you know, that gives it about a 53.33% probability to close positively. So, you know, not a great amount of edge right there. What is interesting to me, however, is the average win return, the average loss return, the median win and loss as well, all of which are actually pretty close to each other. The average loss return and median loss are 14.5 and 9.5 respectively. Now, I'm going to make an assumption here that Bitcoin closes somewhere around where it's currently at. And again, lot can change in the next 4 days. And I am recording this video in advance as well. We're going to be traveling for the next few days. So by the way, if you're trying to reach out, it's going to be difficult for at least a few days here, probably until the end of the week. But yeah, anyways, I'm going to make an assumption here. The assumption is that Bitcoin closes somewhere around where it's currently at. And if it were to shave off about 14% to the downside, or 14.5, that would put Bitcoin back at around 80,500 bucks. I guess 9% would put you, which is the median, would put you closer to about 85. Yeah, about 85,000 bucks. And then, of course, the upside, the average win return has returned about 13.5%, and the median win just over 11%. So going back into it, again, making the assumption that Bitcoin closes somewhere around here, which can very well be massively wrong. 11% to the upside puts Bitcoin at about 105, which would actually be very significant. That would make me be looking for new all-time highs and for bull run continuations to some crazy valuations as well. And 14.5 puts Bitcoin basically at the prior all-time high. So, you know, I do think that is somewhat interesting right there. Again, coming into March, more or less a coin flip. And I should also note that February has been a very weird month as well. Just before we move on here, and we'll go over a little bit more kind of relatively short-term stuff for Bitcoin, but I do want to keep this focus on the higher-term timeframes, just again, because it's being recorded in advance. Yes, where was I? Yeah, February was one of the most likely to close positive months for Bitcoin, historically speaking. Again, historically speaking doesn't mean that it's always going to be that way, but 78.5% is pretty fucking high. And not only that, but for odd years, which 2025 certainly is an odd year, it has been a 100% positive close rate. And as of right now, it's kind of hard to see this one closing positively here, as that would imply Bitcoin would have to pop back up and close above about 102,500, which it is quite far away from right now. Again, 4 days, a lot can happen, obviously, but this did not necessarily play out well in February. Of course, in prior years, or sorry, not in prior years, but in prior months, as we went over the past year, a lot of these stats have been like literally bang fucking on, which is strange. Like you wouldn't expect it to be almost exactly the same as the average. But we did see that for, pretty much all of summer, and then actually most of 2024, in fact. But January Bitcoin did make a new high, but February certainly has not played within the context of that. So, do take that with a bit of a grain of salt, but as always, good to know, where these are, just so that, historically, where these sort of areas of interest can be. Anyways, let's now get into what many people have asked questions about, which is the hash ribbons indicator. The hash ribbon indicator, as you can see, has still not printed a buy signal. That is very, 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 very important here. Again, I want to remind everyone, because some of the comments really scare me, although most of them, it seems like people truly do get it, which is awesome. But for the people who don't get it, they're probably not listening anyways, but in case you happen to give a fuck, I do not think that this indicator or setup is worth playing at all whatsoever in any way, shape, or form until at minimum you get that blue buy signal. And even then, it's not a signal to buy blindly at that exact moment. It gives you an obvious area of interest, like a very pinpoint area of interest for managing risk, which can obviously be helpful in constructing a potentially long-term long position. But for right now, the projected buy signal has dropped significantly here. Just for reference, before I started this video, when Bitcoin was around $95,500, the projected buy signal was showing like 0.5 days, so like literally half a day. As Bitcoin has come down here, that projected buy signal gets pushed out further and further and further, now at about 14 and a half days. If you do recall, or you probably don't because it's been a while since I spoke about this, but let me just actually bring up this chart. Okay, hash, this should be around here. I did do a study, or a quick study, on the average amount of days that it's taken from the capitulation signal to the next buy signal, and yes, there it is. Okay, it's very hidden over here. On average, it's taken about 64 days. Now, to be 42 days, 64 days for the rally that emerges after that. So 42 days. Well, 42 days from when officially was our capitulation signal. Let's see what that would kind of line up with. Let's see. Okay, that was February 3rd. Oh, wow. That's actually February 3rd. Crazy. Anyways, from February 3rd, let's add 42 days. Let's just see where that might be. That would put us mid-March. Yeah, March 17th to be exact. Again, this is an average. Like, doesn't need to be exactly like that, but perhaps somewhere around there. So, I guess it would be uncharacteristic for Bitcoin to actually print the buy signal, like, I guess in the short term. It's not unheard of. We have seen it around the 20-day mark before, but it is quite rare, I should say. So yeah. Anyways, moving on from there, I did also want to go over the new open for the weekly HPDR on CME. Bitcoin did obviously open below the median again. So to me, again, if Bitcoin is going to break down, this is its chance. Like end of February is the chance to do it. I have a pretty hard time seeing Bitcoin close positively at the end of this month now. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to break down to some dastardly levels that a lot of people are speaking about, but I think really max pain here is going to be continuing sideways, with a test of the downside, maybe around 90,000, maybe even a little bit below 90,000 bucks, but continuing sideways until about that mid-March mark, which would actually be right here. So, this can take a long time, obviously. And again, until at minimum this buy signal over here, oh Jesus, and now you see that Bitcoin's popped up 500 bucks. You see it comes down to 7 days. Again, you can understand very quickly, how fast this can change depending upon current price action. But anyways, again, this is really fucking important to understand. Until the blue buy signal confirms on a daily basis, there's not much to talk about here. Or I mean, there is something to talk about for the projected signal. I mean, people seem to love that, but you get my point. It's just not actionable. So it's in the background. It's counting down. It does seem like it will happen. I think that this one will happen before 42 days. So whether it's around end of this month or beginning of March, fine. But until it happens, I would still exercise some caution and say that downside, there is still legitimate possibility of short-term downside until that does happen, potentially in the short term, all the way down to about 87.5 to 88,000 bucks. So do be aware of that, especially as long as Bitcoin is below the weekly median on the HPDR, which is 97,500 on CME. I'm going to generally be I'm generally going to be cautious towards short-term downside. I'll put it that way. So yeah, that's where I'll leave things for today. As always, I want to wish everyone the best of best. Again, we're going to be traveling relatively soon here, so if you're trying to reach out, it might be difficult to get contact probably until about the end of this week. So yeah, wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully on another day.